social media is their reality.
Yeah, if I'm feeling down, then I'll look on those things and they'll just make it worse.
They have designed their algorithms and their networks exactly to cater to human pathology in its most extreme forms.
I originally set out to make a documentary that explored the possible positive benefits of diminished or controlled social media use. What I actually uncovered was something far, far darker.
The United States has been trying to unseat and remove the government of Venezuela for a very long time. Right the way through the period of the previous government of Chavez, and all the way through the administration of the president now, Nicolas Maduro. I say president now. We've reached the point where the opposition leader in Venezuela, Juan Guaido, has set himself up as the interim president of Venezuela. And Trump and a number of other people of the same mentality around the world have recognized this Guaido as the de facto legitimate, better word, leader of Venezuela. And it just shows you. Now, I'm not saying for a minute that mistakes haven't been made by the Venezuelan government. But if you look at the background, it's a classic. You try, first of all, to get rid of leaders, governments you don't like. And when I say you, I mean, of course, the United States and that web of which it's a part, no matter who's in power. And you'll try to organize a kind of civil unrest and all that. And if that doesn't work and you can't pour money in at elections to make sure your person wins, then you start destabilizing the country economically. Of course, sanctions, economic sanctions, have been imposed on Venezuela, and they've got more and more extreme. And what it's done, and I'm not saying the Venezuelan government, like I say, have not made mistakes, but what it's done is create economic mayhem in Venezuela. And people there who can see beyond the moment have recognized what's been going on, and that is that there has been a systematic effort to destabilize Venezuela, not just economically, but in terms of protests, to get rid of this government, which the people of Venezuela, or at least the majority, appear to be deciding that they would rather have, rather than what went before or what the alternative was. And so this has gone on and gone on and gone on until we've reached this point this week where Donald Trump, and it could have been Barack Obama, could have been Bill Clinton, could have been Boy George Bush, could have been any of them saying this, because it's the one-party state at work. And Trump said, "Today I am officially recognizing the president of the Venezuelan National Assembly, Juan Guaido, as the interim president of Venezuela." He called on the government of Nicolas Maduro. He called it illegitimate and directly responsible for any threats posed to the Venezuelan people. Now, where on earth have you heard that before? You heard that in relation to Saddam Hussein, in relation to President Assad, in relation to the leader, Colonel Gaddafi of Libya. You're hearing it being said about Iran. This is the mantra that you get, because they have a target regime anywhere, somewhere, and of course they're, oh no, we are moral, care about democracy and freedom, America. So we would never get rid of a legitimate, democratically elected government. Oh no, we're good guys, we're good people. We wouldn't do that. So what you do is you then start the mantra that the government that you are targeting is not legitimate, and that people are suffering, as if the American government care about that, given how many people it's made suffer in league with the British, etc., decade after decade after decade. But this is all part of it too. Some years ago, and I go into this in some detail in the book. I think I mentioned this in the last book, Everything You Need to Know But Never Been Told. George Soros, this billionaire financier, this global manipulator on behalf of this web, this cabal, he came out with a suggestion. Actually, he was just releasing something in the public arena so it could become law, that instead of having governments as the definition of sovereignty of a country, you make the people the definition of the sovereignty of the country. So, oh, well, that's fair enough. You're taking power away from leaders and you're giving it to the people. Well, as if that's what George Soros was talking about. Couldn't care less about people, quite the opposite. So the idea was that if you move the definition of sovereignty from the government to the people of the country, then, as he actually pointed out, as if it was a good thing, you are not overriding the sovereignty of a nation by targeting the government and removing it, because that's not the definition of sovereignty of the nation. The sovereignty of the nation is the population. And this then was accepted by the United Nations, etc., and became the way that things are looked at. And what this means is now, when the cabal are targeting a government, they can say, this government is not a legitimate representation of the people. The people's sovereignty, basically, is being overridden by the government. And therefore, to protect the sovereignty of the country, i.e. the people, we can quite legitimately remove this regime to protect sovereignty and to protect democracy, when the very opposite is what they're doing. But that's how the inversion works. And you can always tell when it's an organized cabal coup, when all the usual suspects come flying out to support what America wants. It's all, oh no, Trump, oh, we don't like Trump. And as soon as the Trump suggests or supports anything in line with the agenda, oh yeah, Trump's right, yeah, we think the same. So what we've had, therefore, is Venezuela being turned upon by a number of governments in South America and by the EU. Now, President Maduro has said that the Venezuelan government, which it obviously claims is still it and not this other guy, Guaido, is breaking off diplomatic relations with the United States and giving US diplomats, 72 hours to leave the country. And what's happening in response is people like Pompeo, this ultra-extremist Secretary of State in America, is saying, no, we're not leaving because you're not the legitimate government anymore. Guaido is our man, because that's what it is. They won't be supporting Guaido if he had anything like the same policies, economically, etc., as Maduro. It's because what's happening is that there is a coup, collective coup going on in South America, bringing in people that are representatives of this cabal, one of them being this new leader in Brazil, who of course immediately came out, entering stage far right again, to support what Trump said about Venezuela and to recognize this Guaido as the interim leader. So you've got a situation here now where, because of the recognition of an opposition leader as the interim leader, they're saying now that the Maduro government is not legitimate, so anything the Maduro government says is not representative of Venezuela. What that now means is Venezuela's being run from Washington, because nothing the elected government of Maduro says will be recognized by the United States and all its allies. And so where this is going is not pleasant, because it's reached that point now of the way that this process of destabilizing and overthrowing the Venezuelan government, it's reached the point now of clearly no return. So we have this situation then where the others in the cabal, representatives of the cabal, have come out and supported it. This guy Bolsonaro, the Brazilian leader, who is a very extreme man and clearly a very deeply unpleasant man, a man for some, you would think on the surface, bizarre reason, who is obsessed with Israel and supporting Israel from Brazil. And this is why he and Netanyahu get on so well as bosom buddies. This is why the far-right regime of Netanyahu in Israel is so supportive of the new Brazilian government, and if you look at history, so supportive of far-right regimes. Let us not forget that Israel was a supporter, covertly, it came out later, of apartheid South Africa. The Anti-Defamation League, this far-right front for the Israeli government around the world, especially in America where it's based, targeting critics of Israel as anti-Semitic, it was exposed for doing surveillance on people in America on behalf of the apartheid regime in South Africa. And of course, given the background of the far-right regime in Nazi Germany, you would think that would be an extraordinary thing to do, except, of course, the Israeli government, like every other government, is not there, or virtually every other government, is not there to support and represent Jewish people, but to represent a communal agenda with other points in the web around the world. European Union has sided with democratic forces. A democratic force is anything that suits the United States government and its allies. European Union has sided with democratic forces in Venezuela, backing the self-proclaimed president Juan Guaido over the elected government of Nicolas Maduro. Unlike Maduro, the Parliamentary Assembly, including Juan Guaido, have a democratic mandate from Venezuelan citizens, says President of the European Council Donald Tusk on Wednesday, urging all of Europe to support, quote, democratic forces in Venezuela. And of course, this is spoken by a man, Donald Tusk, who represents a extraordinarily undemocratic edifice of bureaucratic power called the European Union, who, with his colleagues, but him certainly centrally involved, is trying to destroy Brexit and the democratic referendum decision of the British people.